also have with us Fatma Karume, a fearless human rights defender and lawyer with decades of experience. She first rose to prominence as the president of Tanzania's Law Society from 2018 to 2019 when she campaigned for the independence of the judiciary. In November 2020, she was disbarred in a politically motivated move that arose from her blunt criticism of former President John Magufuli. We are also delighted to be joined by Dr. Ikande Clement Kwayu, a prominent civil rights activist, a political scientist, and a widely read author who specializes in international relations. Her most recent books, which we encourage you to check out, have focused on the roles of religion and development in Tanzania. Last but certainly not least, we are joined by Jebra Kambole, an advocate of the High Court of Tanzania. He is also the founder and a partner at Law Guards Advocates, where he practices criminal, corporate, and civil litigation. Jabber has additional expertise in human rights law and strategic litigation, having brought cases before the East Africa Court of Justice and the African Court on Human and People's Rights. After our main segment, we will hand over to our colleague Nick Cheeseman, who will be familiar to many of you, to help manage the Q&A portion of today's show. So do get those questions ready. I see we have some coming in already. So Mentade, with all of that said, back over to you to begin today's important and very, very timely conversation.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So, Tundu, many people joining us today may be surprised to hear about the latest crackdown, having been under the impression that the situation in Tanzania was moving in a positive direction. You famously met with the current president upon your return to the country, and hopes were high that the country was on a pathway to reform and that political space was opening up. What has happened over the last 12 months?
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm so happy to see so many friends, so many old colleagues and comrades in arms for many years. What should I say? I think we maybe were too quick. And I'm part of I also bear part of the blame. We were too quick to give Samia the benefit of the doubt. We should never have given her the benefit of the doubt because we knew that she was a product of CCM. She had served as vice president to John Pombe Magufuli, and she partook of all those 6 terrible years of terror. So when she became president in March of 2021, she was coming into the office with all that baggage, and she did not deserve any benefit of the doubt from any one of us, and especially from the people that her regime had tormented for so long, the people of Tanzania, as well as from the international community. Samia came in as president. She took over the government and the machinery of repression that was made in the name and image of John Pombe Magufuli. She didn't change much. She came up with some, she came in with very nice promises, but I think she was always very clear. She made it very clear from the very beginning that serious reform was not on her agenda. She said it at the earliest, that constitutional reform, and you cannot talk of reform in Tanzania without talking of constitutional reform. She said clearly that constitutional reform was not part of her agenda. She made some promises, yes, but the promise of serious democratic reform, we should not give her credit for something that she didn't really make so much of. She didn't make serious promises of reform. But the most important thing is she inherited the machinery of that repressive state that was created, that tormented us so much during the Magufuli presidency. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think we also tend to miss is in her 3 years in office, Samia did not only reject constitutional and institutional reform, in fact, she introduced developments in the opposite direction. Today, everyone is talking about abductions and kidnappings and disappearances and all that, and the murders that go with it. The question is, who is doing these kidnappings and disappearances and murders and so on? The quick answer is the police force. And I believe that the police are heavily involved in this. But we forget that last year, only last year, in August, September of last year, Samia brought in amendments to the law establishing the Intelligence and Security Service, which for the first time gave the Tanzania Intelligence and Security Service police powers. Before last year, the intelligence and security operatives were not allowed to arrest anyone. They could do whatever surveillance they were allowed to under the law, but they could not arrest. They did not have police powers. Samia Suluhu Hassan and her government gave the apparatchiks, the operatives of the security and intelligence service powers to arrest and detain individuals. Now the question is, we all know when you are arrested by the police, you are taken to a police station, and there's a whole range of things that the police are required to do by law to make sure that you don't just disappear. You have to be recorded. You have to be processed. You have to be given police bail. You have to be taken to court. What happens when you are arrested by officials from the intelligence and security service? Where do they take you to? Which police station are they? Or a TIS station, because police stations are manned by police officers. Where do TIS officers take you when they arrest you, as they are now empowered to do? We are surprised that people are disappearing. We are not asking ourselves, well, they are being, they has allowed an institution, an agency, a security agency, which does not have the infrastructure to deal with accused persons the way the police force does. We tend to forget that the intelligence and security service operates in the darkness. And these are the people, I think, who are primarily responsible for this wave of abductions and disappearances and killings that we have witnessed. There is another thing. In the same amendment to the law establishing the Intelligence and Security Service, before the minister responsible for security and intelligence was the supervisor, the operational supervisor of the activities of the Intelligence and Security Service. That is no longer the case after the last year's amendments. As of those amendments, the security and intelligence apparatus now comes directly under the president. So the operational control of TIS is now in the hands of the president. So whatever happens, whatever they do now, they do it because they are operationally, in matters of daily operations, they are under the control of the president herself. And now they are allowed to provide protection to those of us who are thinking of running for presidency in next year's general elections because of the same amendments. So remember, what we are seeing today has a background. The background is the continuity between Samia and Magufuli and Samia, and the recent changes in the law which have allowed the intelligence and security apparatus to do that which they were prohibited by law to do in years past. So to conclude, to answer your question shortly, we missed the opportunity to press much harder for democratic reforms when President Samia took over in March of 2021. Instead of lessening the pressure, instead of easing the pressure, which we did, we should have increased the pressure for her to move the country away from the dark shadow that was her predecessor's administration. We didn't do that. We gave her the benefit of the doubt that she did not deserve, and yes, this is what we are getting as a result.
Thank you so much, Tundu, for laying out that super important context for us, including for those who are joining us who might not be familiar with Tanzania. And we heard you mention, and we specifically highlighted at the top the recent murder of Ali Kibao, and of course we were all shocked by that. And our team extends solidarity and condolences to his family and colleagues who might be listening today. And I have to imagine for you, given your experiences, this conjured really painful memories for you, and it's definitely not an isolated case. We know, for example, that Tanzania's Bar Association has evidence of 83 individuals going missing, being abducted in recent months, some turning up severely tortured and beaten, some turned up um, dead. So, you mentioned the missed opportunities dating back to March 2021 and the need now to increase pressure. So, I wanted to ask you what you and your colleagues are planning to do in response to this increasingly grim reality. If you could give us perhaps some specifics on that.
But thank you very much. I think I would say very briefly that we are going to do what the only thing that we can do, and that is mobilize a public opinion in Tanzania and internationally to pressure for reform. We are going to go everywhere. We are going to do everything that is in our power to do to make sure that the people of Tanzania do not accept our country being dragged back into the dark abyss where we were during the Magufuli years. So we'll do that which our laws and our constitution allow, and that is mass mobilization, mass organization, and mass resistance. We cannot do anything else. We don't have the arms to defend ourselves with. We are going to also need a lot of international support. In previous years, international support has been very important in democratic struggles, not only in Tanzania, but also elsewhere on the continent and around the world. We are going to ask our friends internationally not to give the government of Tanzania succor, not to give the government of Tanzania any help diplomatically, politically, economically, until it does the right thing. And the right thing at this moment in time is to undertake constitutional and institutional reform that will usher in a democratic Tanzania. Mass mobilization, democratic struggles, international solidarity. Those are the three things that I think we are going to be endeavoring to achieve in the next in the months and years ahead.
Thank you very much for that, Tundu. Really appreciate it. Fatma, I just saw your note. Are you able to hear us at this point? Because I wanted to come to you next. Fatma, if you could unmute yourself. All right, it seems we're having some issues with Fatma's audio right now. Dr. Kwayu, can you hear us?
It seems some people have problems hearing Jeff. Fatma, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself and let me know if you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm unable to hear Jeff. I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear Tundu, but sadly I can't hear Jeff.
Okay. In that case, if Jeff, if you text me the question, I can pass it on to Fatma.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Or
Mantade, you can step in if you want.
Mantade, did you want to go ahead and go to Fatma here in the meantime?
That's okay. Fatma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's perfect. So we were just reflecting on how, as we've just had, the crackdown of today is far from the first in Tanzania's recent history. So it seems like every time the ruling party feels threatened, political rights and civil liberties are the first thing to be sacrificed. So what are the limitations of the Tanzanian legal system that allow this to happen with such regularity? And what reforms must be undertaken to allow Tanzania to truly progress beyond the political violence and repression that is the norm?
I've always said that the legal reforms that we need in Tanzania are extensive, but one of the most important one is to completely divorce the justice system from the executive. And the only way to do this is to take away presidential powers of appointing judges, both of the High Court and the Court of Appeal. We also need to take away, and these powers are actually within the Constitution of the United Republic of Tanzania. The president can appoint anybody. She can wake up tomorrow and appoint me as a judge of the Court of Appeal. And, there is no process in which I would be vetted by members of the legal community, the general public. There is a vetting system, but I think the vetting system is done by the security services, and it is entirely based on their perception of your loyalty to the ruling party. It has nothing to do with your ability, capabilities, or your loyalty to the United Republic of Tanzania, which of course we have to accept is different from loyalty to the ruling party. It seems that loyalty to the ruling party has now become a concept of patriotism, that you are unpatriotic if you are disloyal to the ruling party, you criticize the ruling party, and this type of disloyalty and or lack of patriotism deserves death, as far as some members of the security services and particularly also the ruling party are concerned. Now, once we divorce the court, there are a myriad ways of divorcing the court from the ruling party and the presidential power. So the other way of divorcing the court is under our constitution, the Chief Justice is appointed by the president, and the president has the power to remove the Chief Justice at any point. So the Chief Justice does not have security of tenure. He has security of tenure, so to speak, as a judge of the Court of Appeal, but not as a Chief Justice. And therefore, we have to remove this power from the president. She cannot, or he cannot, be allowed to appoint any old person to be the Chief Justice of the United Republic of Tanzania. We have to have an open vetting system. The vetting system has got to be inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I mean, it's got to take into consideration the general public. It's got to take into consideration all aspects of the political divide. So we see countries which have evolved in this regard, particularly, let's say, in South Africa and Kenya, where vetting is done by parliament, and the general public are also allowed to put questions to the prospective candidates. So I'd like to see those changes. But you see, this is not going to happen. And Samia Suluhu has no intention of doing this because the control of the judiciary has been the mainstay of CCM's political power. And they almost see it as an existential crisis to allow the judiciary to be fully independent. well, not fully independent, because no institution can ever be fully independent, but at least independent enough to be able to hold its own against the executive and to balance power and check the powers of the executive. They see that as an existential crisis, and they use the judiciary as a rubber stamp. And so I don't think these changes are going to occur. The other thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see the judiciary with its own budget, so that it is not reliant on the Minister of Constitutional Affairs with respect to its budget. Our judiciary is extremely poor. It does not have a guaranteed budget. I'd like to see the Constitution say, for example, have an article that says the judiciary will be entitled to between, let's say, 1.5% to 3% of the budget, depending on their needs. And then we have a commission, an independent commission, that reviews the judiciary's budget every year and determines whether or not they should get 1.7% or the entire 3%. But I wouldn't like government to be in charge of that. And at the moment, government is in charge of that. So the government controls the judiciary with respect to purse strings, respect to appointments, respect to even security of tenure. I mean, recently, we've seen this on two occasions. We've seen a judge removed from the judiciary and appointed as an attorney general. So they seem to think that you can just remove a judge from the judiciary and appoint him as an attorney general in the executive. And then when you're fed up with him or tired of him or he's done your bidding, you then return him back to the judiciary, which is what's happened in this case, where Samia Suluhu removed Feleshi, who was a principal judge in charge of the High Court, appointed him as the Attorney General of the United Republic of Tanzania, and then when she thought she wanted somebody else, simply moved him like a pawn back into the judiciary, but this time as a member of the Court of Appeal. And I'm assuming he's poised poised in a position whereby when she's well, good and ready, which will probably be next year, when the present Chief Justice's unconstitutional term comes to an end, because he's been given a contract. He was supposed to retire a year ago, but creates loyalty to the president, whereby the if Feleshi becomes the Chief Justice of the United Republic of Tanzania, which I expect he will be, he will be indebted to the president, and therefore he's not going to act independently. This is part of human nature. So there are a lot of changes I'd like to see in the Constitution. But those changes, sadly, are not forthcoming, and I doubt they will be forthcoming.
Fatma, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I am, Jeff.
Excellent, great. I wanted to ask you a quick follow-up question. You mentioned some of these reforms that need to take place within the judiciary, as well as the executive, to help ameliorate the situation as it is on the ground. But one other topic that I've seen quite a bit in these discussions is the internal political dynamics of the ruling CCM party, and how this seems to be a critical driver of this ongoing political crackdown. These episodes of people being abducted from their homes, from buses, from public transport. And wanted to ask you, how you see the balance of power within the CCM and those personalities who might be advising the president, impacting this already volatile situation. You hear many people excuse or make excuses for the president, saying she's hamstrung by more hardline elements within the party, and that it might actually get worse in the lead up to local elections in December and general elections next year. What are the realities of those political dynamics, and how do you unpack all of that and make it make sense to the audience that is listening today?
Well, I think I think that's a poor excuse to actually say that she's under pressure from the conservative or more murderous elements of the party, shall we call them, is a poor excuse. I don't believe that there are people within the party, within CCM, who are suggesting that the president should unleash the security services on opposition members, and this should be a strategy, a CCM strategy. What I mean, what I do see is whenever you see the president changing her men, and I say that advisedly, changes, you see an impact with the way people behave. So Kinana goes, we get a new DGIS, Director of Intelligence Service, Director General of Intelligence Services, and operations begin. So it's almost like, as somebody viewing this from the outside, it's almost like she's choosing the men who are going to do the job for her, the job she wants done for her. You know, you say to her, well, what's Masauni still doing there? Her Minister of Home Affairs. He's unable to take control of the situation, it seems. She doesn't remove him. You then question. She tweets, actually. She doesn't even condemn. There is no condemnation from her, no public condemnation from her about the death of an opposition member. I mean, that to me, it disgusted me. I couldn't believe that our president could not bring herself to stand up in public and condemn the death and the violent death of a member of the opposition, a high-ranking member of the opposition. All she had to say was to send condolences to the party and to the family. No condemnation. Now, without that kind of noise from the president herself, these murders are going to continue. This is tacit approval, in my view. You see, I tweeted this a few days ago. There is, in law, explicit approval. And we also have something called tacit approval. Now, when a president keeps quiet, doesn't condemn, doesn't show her anger, her disapproval of the occurrences of these kidnappings, of these disappearances, this is tacit approval. There's no other way of calling this out. You know, the fact that she's not doing what Magufuli did, and Magufuli used to actually approve this explicitly, and warn the opposition and call them traitors, and actually say to security services that there's only one way of dealing with traitors, and that is to kill them. This is what Magufuli did. She doesn't do that. But when the deed is done, she doesn't disapprove publicly. And this is frightening. This is almost a Lady Macbeth type of conduct, which to me is scary.
Thank you very, very much, Fatma. And I think your closing statement really resonates because it's this conversation around the fact that nothing is said about this high-ranking official from an opposition party that dies, and the president doesn't speak into the manner, the nature in which he dies, leaving almost it almost legitimates the violence, but also it normalizes it, because if the president is not speaking against it, at a lower level, ordinary people that are speaking truth to power, there's almost a devaluing of human life where it doesn't matter so much. And I think that's very problematic. Like you said, I kind of want to come to you, but before I do that, I wanted to say that to all of the people in the audience that are sending us requests, we're going to have a session that allows you to join us as a speaker, say your question or your reflection. So you don't have to send us your request right now. We will open up for audience reflections a bit later in the conversation. But Ikande, you've written a lot about how Tanzania's elections are wide open to state abuse. Based on your research, what reforms can be enacted to ensure that Tanzanian citizens are not subject to yet another sham poll later this year and next year, in which legitimate questions are raised about the outcome? Is there a realistic approach or path forward to end the cycle of contested elections?
Thank you very much, Montate, and everybody here. I think this is a difficult question in the sense that I don't want to be pessimistic, but I am realistic. I don't think there are going to be any legal reform that would influence positively the forthcoming election this year and next year. And I think the only option we have, as Tundu Lissu explained earlier, is we need civic pressure from the public, pressure from the international community, at least to bring about shame or to bring about, I don't know if I should say a sense of shame that elections would be decent enough, because I don't think the election would be different from 2020 elections, from how we see things going and are turning. So, we already have electoral laws that were reformed or amended rather, but they did not change anything substantial. So things are just the same. And apart from laws that we have, there's a lot of police involvement in the political affairs. And we saw last month when Chadema youth were trying to celebrate Youth Day, what happened? Over 300 youth were arrested, including the top leaders of the party. So there's no even shame to be decent enough. And I think we need to understand this in the bigger context, in the sense that CCM ability to tolerate anything democratic or any progressive step in terms of democracy is waning, is declining. So CCM is becoming worse in terms of its ability to survive in a democratic space or in a party space, which is really scary, because it's becoming very insecure. It doesn't believe that it can do decent politics anymore. So it has to use force. And as much as CCM has been using oppression as a strategy from way back, but I think it's becoming worse. And its plan is to create fear and to silence anybody who tries to come up or to speak or to act. So, and this is why we see that, for example, Mzee Ali Kibao, who was violently killed, not very many people knew him. And if you look at his photo, and if you look at, if you hear what he did, he was a decent man. He didn't propagate violence. You know, he did his work in the party in a decent manner. But the fact that they could identify him and kill him is to create fear for even those who are not speaking, but they are supporting the they're supporting democratic activities, whether through parties or any other institution, are threatened. And I think this was the message that was sent. And unfortunately, as Fatma said, there's no shame. There's no even face act to condemn. So it's very dangerous. And I think the only way forward to at least see something is for international community, but also for us in the country, opposition, the public, even if you don't have any party affiliation, to really provide pressure. And I don't know what we're going to do about the political culture in Tanzania so that people can actually be confident enough to question and to push. And I think we have a lot of work to do so that people can be confident enough to speak, to come up and to participate in these civic activities like demonstrations that are planned from next week, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kwayo. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to ask you a quick follow-up question because you've also written quite a bit about the international dimension of African politics, and we heard Mr. Lisu talk about this at the outset. So I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on what the role of the so-called international community should be in Tanzania. And I'm also asking because I notice listening today, we have a lot of folks from government agencies, including here in Washington, a lot of folks from foundations who are listening. So I'm sure they'd be super interested in what your thoughts on, what donors, what donor governments, what allied governments can do to perhaps be more critical of the current government. Or is there a risk that such criticism could, in effect, backfire, particularly amid a very volatile political environment? Would love your thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you. I think international voice matters a lot, especially in this administration, because it cares about image. So we saw, for example, in the last administration, President Magufuli did not attend UN, for example, General Assembly, or he didn't bother to explain himself or to gain international attention in the sense, to international attention or to explain himself. He didn't bother about that. But President Samia cares a lot about her image. She wants to appear diplomatic, polished, sophisticated, and she engages. So I think when international community from international media, international democratic organizations, foreign governments, just like the other day, the embassies wrote a joint statement about the killings and kidnappings. So those things actually hurt her, and I think they would contribute to something, not entirely change, but I think it's very important that international community condemn. We need to use international media a lot to speak about the situation in Tanzania so that at least the administration can know that we are exposed. And I think that can regulate their behavior to some extent.
Thank you so much, Ikande. Thank you so much to all of the speakers for the conversation so far. We don't have our fourth speaker on the panel yet. If we manage to get him during this space, you'll be able to come in and give reflections. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move it over to the question and answer session that will be led by our colleague, Nick Chisman, where we're inviting reflections from our audience. You can direct a question to a panelist or share your thoughts on the topic. We'll do our best to get each of you to speak. And so in order to make this process as efficient as possible, please remember to keep your questions short and to the point. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Mentari, and thanks, everyone. It's been a great discussion so far about a really important issue. Just to say to everyone, please do start requesting the mic. We'll take a few comments at a time and then let some of our speakers respond and then take some more comments, and we'll go for as long as we can. A couple of quick thoughts I just wanted to reflect on. I think Tundu's point right at the start was really important about how often maybe we give leaders too much of the benefit of the doubt. We start applauding, they start talking about reform, maybe donors start putting more money into the country, civil society starts, getting out the red carpet when they haven't actually done anything, right? When they haven't actually done anything yet that would undermine in any way their hold on power. And maybe one of the broader lessons we want to take away from this, and it's not just this case, you could argue in some ways Magufuli at the beginning was similar, but also other leaders in other countries, that there's almost such a rush to kind of celebrate anyone who talks about reform that people sometimes take their eye off the ball about whether that's actually going to be delivered. And that could be quite a dangerous thing to do. So maybe there's a really important broader lesson here. The second thing, and I want to throw this back maybe particularly to Fatma and others because the legal background is, one of the things that really worries us about what we're seeing right now in Tanzania is that some of this is the kind of standard legal repression, right? So you don't allow the opposition to have rallies, you don't allow new opposition parties to even be registered. That's a big issue at the minute. You arrest opposition figures and so on. But there's also a second thing which is happening, which is outside of the formal legal system, which is the abductions, right? And here it may well be the police, it may well be people connected to the army and so on, but is anyone having is anybody there who's requested it? Peter, are there anyone
in Tanzania, our problem or our challenges are pretty much the same. So I wanted to ask to the speakers, how best can we create help each other in our struggles? Thank you.
great? Okay, let's go.